The galaxy was dying, and Ambassador Lyra Veltar knew it. She floated in her water-filled chamber aboard the last Coalition command ship, watching the holographic display show another red dot disappear from the star map. That was Kepler Prime, home to 12 billion crystal beings who had lived in peace for 3,000 years. Now it was nothing but space dust and the hungry ships of the HFY. Lyra's gills fluttered with fear as she counted the remaining green dots on the map. 7 worlds. 7 worlds left out of the 200 that had made up the Galactic Harmony Coalition just 6 months ago. The greatest alliance of peaceful species in galactic history was about to become extinct. The doors to the command center opened with a soft hiss, and General Thanos stepped inside. His bird-like features were drawn tight with exhaustion. His colorful feathers, once bright and proud, now looked dull and lifeless. Behind him came Elder Vexarian, the gas being whose translucent form shimmered with nervous energy. "Any word from the outer colonies?" Lyra asked, though she already knew the answer from their expressions. "The Betharian system fell 3 hours ago," Thanos said, his voice hollow. "They sent 18 bioships. The Betharians tried to surrender, but the HFY don't take prisoners. They just consumed everything." Elder Vexarian's form pulsed with grief. "My people on Cloud Station 9 reported the same thing before their transmission ended. The HFY ships landed and began converting all organic matter, plants, animals, people. Everything became part of their collective." Lyra closed her eyes and tried not to think about what that meant. The HFY were unlike any enemy the Coalition had ever faced. They were part machine, part living organism, and completely without mercy. They arrived at a planet, consumed all life forms to grow their bioships, and moved on to the next target. No negotiation, no demands, just endless hunger. "How long before they reach Sanctuary Station?" she asked. 4 days, maybe 5, Thanos replied. "Our best scientists are working on new defensive systems, but every time we find something that works, the HFY adapt. Their bioships learn from each attack and become stronger." The 3 leaders stood in silence, watching the hologram. Each of them represented species that had never known true war. The Coalition had been built on trade, science, and peaceful cooperation. Their weapons were defensive tools, their ships designed for exploration and transport. They had no experience fighting an enemy that wanted nothing but their complete destruction. "We need to send out the final distress call," Lyra said quietly. "Contact every species in the galaxy. Someone out there might have an idea we haven't thought of." "Most species have already fallen or fled to the rim worlds," Elder Vexarian pointed out. "Who is left to answer?" "We try anyway," Lyra insisted. "Our children deserve that much." She moved to the communication console and began setting up the galaxy-wide broadcast. Her tentacles worked quickly over the controls, encoding the message in every known language and transmission format. This would be the Coalition's final plea for help. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, speaking into the recorder. "This is Ambassador Lyra Veltar of the Galactic Harmony Coalition. We face complete extinction from an enemy called the HFY. These beings consume all life and cannot be reasoned with. Our greatest minds and most advanced technology have failed to stop them." She paused, trying to keep her voice steady. "We do not ask for ships or weapons. We ask for ideas, for any knowledge that might help us survive. We have perhaps 4 days before our last stronghold falls. If anyone out there has faced such an enemy and lived, please respond. Our children are counting on every species that values life over destruction." The message was encrypted and sent through every relay station, every communication satellite, every deep space beacon in the galaxy. It would reach the furthest edges of known space within hours. Now, all they could do was wait. The responses came slowly at first. A few rim world colonies sent their sympathy but had nothing to offer. Some academic institutions shared theoretical weapons that existed only on paper. A handful of pirate groups offered to fight for payment, but their small ships would be useless against the biofleet. As the hours passed, Lyra began to lose hope. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had already fallen to the HFY. What could the remaining scattered species possibly offer? Then, 18 hours after the broadcast, something unexpected happened. A single transmission came from a small yellow star in an unremarkable sector. The signal was primitive, using basic radio waves instead of quantum communication. The source was listed as Earth in the galactic database. Earth? General Thanos looked confused as he pulled up the file. I've never heard of this system. It was surveyed about 50 years ago, Elder Vexarian said, reading from the display. Class G star, third planet shows signs of life. The survey team classified it as a Class 12 death world and marked it for future study. A death world? Lyra felt her gills contract with worry. What species could survive on a Class 12? Class 12 was the highest rating for planetary danger. It meant crushing gravity, violent weather, toxic atmosphere, and deadly predators. Most coalition species needed environmental suits just to visit a Class 8 world. The transmission crackled with static as the primitive signal played through their advanced speakers. A voice spoke in a language the computers needed several minutes to translate. Coalition Command, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Force. We received your distress call about the HFY invasion. We don't have much in the way of advanced technology, but we've dealt with extinction-level threats before. If you're willing to work with a young species, we'd like to help. The three leaders stared at each other in amazement. A death world species was offering to help them? These humans must be incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. What could a primitive species possibly do against the HFY? Thanos asked. Maybe, Lyra said slowly. That's exactly what we need to find out. Send a response. Tell them we accept any help they can offer. As she began composing the reply, Lyra wondered if they were making a mistake. But with only days left before the HFY arrived, what choice did they have? The galaxy's most advanced civilizations had failed. Perhaps it was time to try something completely different. Perhaps it was time to learn what a death world could teach them about survival. The human ship looked like it had been built by children playing with scrap metal. Ambassador Lyra watched through the observation deck as the vessel approached Sanctuary Station. Where coalition ships were smooth curves of energy-conducting crystal and living metal, this Earth ship was all angles and crude welding. It moved with chemical rockets instead of gravity manipulation. And its hull was covered with what looked like primitive sensor arrays and weapon systems. Are we sure this thing can even dock properly? General Thanos asked, his feathers ruffled with concern. Their pilot seems confident, Elder Vexarian replied, reading the docking request. They're asking for an atmosphere mix that's 78% nitrogen and 21% oxygen. That's almost pure poison. And they want the gravity set to 9.8 meters per second squared? Lyra added, checking the environmental controls. That's nearly 3 times our standard setting. They watched as the human ship extended a docking tube and connected with the station. The seal held, though the entire section creaked under the stress of supporting such a dense atmosphere. Warning lights flashed as the station's computers registered hazardous environmental conditions in the docking bay. The airlock cycled and 4 figures stepped onto the station. Lyra's first thought was that the humans looked like they were wearing armor. Then she realized that the thick, dense forms she was seeing were their natural bodies. Each human was compact and solid, with heavy bones and layered muscle. They moved with a predator's grace despite their weight, and their eyes constantly scanned their surroundings. The one in front, a female with short dark hair and strange pale scars across her hands, stepped forward. "I'm Commander Sarah Chen," she said through the translation device. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us." Her voice was steady and calm, but Lyra could see the way Chen's eyes noted every exit, every potential threat, every detail of the station's layout. This was not someone who had lived in peace her entire life. "I'm Ambassador Lyra Veltar," she replied, trying to keep her nervous gills from fluttering. "These are General Thanos and Elder Vexiarian. We're grateful for any assistance Earth can provide." The tall human behind Chen stepped forward. He was even larger than the others, with pale skin and bright blue eyes. "Dr. Marcus Webb, xenobiologist," he said. "Mind if I ask what you're breathing in that water tank?" "Standard aquatic mix," Lyra replied. "Dissolved oxygen, trace minerals, pH balanced to 7.2. "Fascinating," Webb said, pulling out a small device and taking readings. "On Earth, that would support most marine life. Your gills are remarkably efficient." The third human, stocky with graying hair and calloused hands, grunted something that sounded like approval. "Pavel Volkov, engineer. This station uses quantum crystalline supports, yes? Very elegant. No redundancy systems, though." "Redundancy systems?" General Thanos asked. "Backup systems for when the primary systems fail," Volkov explained. "On Earth, we always plan for things to break." The fourth human, a tall female with dark skin and kind eyes, smiled warmly. "Amara Okafor, cultural liaison. I study how different species communicate and cooperate." Commander Chen pulled out a data pad. "We've reviewed the information you sent about the Vex-Hi. Before we proceed, I need to understand your military capabilities." "Military?" Elder Vexarian's form shimmered with confusion. "We don't have military forces. We have security teams and exploration fleets." "How do you resolve conflicts between species?" Webb asked. "Negotiation and mediation," Lyra replied. "The Coalition has maintained peace for over 1,000 years through diplomatic solutions." The humans exchanged glances. Chen made a note on her pad. "What's the largest loss of life your species have experienced in recent memory?" "The Andorian plague 60 years ago killed about 2,000 people," Thanos said. "It was a terrible tragedy." 2,000? Chen repeated quietly. "In human terms, that would be a small factory accident." "Factory accident?" Lyra felt her water temperature rise with alarm. "How many people work in your factories?" "Depends on the factory," Volkov said casually. "Some employ 50,000 or more." "And accidents kill thousands of people?" Elder Vexarian's form went completely transparent with shock. "Sometimes," Webb said. "Earth isn't a safe place. We lose people to storms, earthquakes, diseases, animal attacks, industrial accidents, and about 100 other ways to die. That's before you count human conflicts." "Human conflicts?" Thanos asked. "Wars," Chen said simply. "My species has been fighting each other for our entire history. Only in the last century did we start working together against common threats." The Coalition leaders stared at the humans in horror. These beings came from a world so dangerous that they had evolved to fight constantly, even against their own kind. No wonder they survived on a Class 12 death world. "Let's see your defensive systems," Chen continued. "How do you protect your worlds?" They spent the next several hours touring Sanctuary Station's defenses. The humans asked strange questions about backup power systems, emergency evacuation procedures, and what they called contingency planning. They seemed particularly interested in the station's waste disposal systems and emergency life support. When they reached the command center, Dr. Webb pulled out a small container and poured himself a drink from it. The liquid was black and steaming hot. The smell made several Coalition members back away in alarm. "What is that substance?" Elder Vexarian asked. "Coffee," Webb replied, taking a sip. "Stimulant beverage, helps with long work sessions." The station's medical scanner immediately began flashing warnings. "That liquid would dissolve most organic tissues," the computer announced. "Recommend immediate medical attention." Webb looked at the scanner with mild interest. "Huh. About the same acidity as citrus fruit. Must be your sensitivity levels." He continued drinking the industrial solvent as if it were harmless. "Your species drinks acid for pleasure?" Lyra asked weakly. "Among other things," Okafor said cheerfully. "We also enjoy foods that would be considered toxic to most life forms. Alcohol, capsaicin, caffeine, chocolate compounds. If it doesn't kill us immediately, we usually try to eat it." Engineer Volkov was examining a power coupling when it suddenly sparked and discharged enough electricity to kill most coalition species. He grabbed it with his bare hands to steady it, apparently unaffected by the electrical current. "Insulation is loose," he said, tightening something with his fingers. "Should be more stable now." "That was a potentially lethal electrical discharge," General Thanos said faintly. "Not really," Volkov replied. "Maybe enough to make muscles twitch. Human nervous system runs on electrical impulses anyway." Commander Chen finished reviewing the defensive systems and turned to face the coalition leaders. "I need to be direct with you. The Vex-High are a military threat, and you have no military experience. Your technology is impressive, but you're thinking like prey." "Prey?" Lyra asked. "You're trying to hide and defend. That might work against natural predators, but the Vex-High are intelligent hunters. They'll adapt to anything you throw at them." Chen's expression was serious. "To beat a predator, you have to think like a predator." "We don't know how to do that," Elder Vex-Arian admitted. "That's why we're here," Chen said. "Humans have survived on Earth by learning to be the most dangerous predators on the planet. We're going to teach you how to hunt." The coalition leaders looked at each other nervously. They had asked for salvation, and the galaxy had sent them apex predators from a death world. They were beginning to realize they might have gotten exactly what they needed. The training session was not going well. Commander Chen stood before a group of 200 coalition volunteers in the station's main assembly hall. She had been trying to explain basic military tactics for 3 hours, and most of her audience looked either confused or horrified. "Let me try this again," Chen said patiently. "When facing a superior enemy, you don't meet them head-on. You attack their supply lines, their communication systems, and their weak points. You make them fight on your terms, not theirs." A young Corvan male, one of the mammalian refugees whose homeworld had fallen last week, raised his furry hand. "But Commander Chen, that sounds like cheating." "There's no such thing as cheating when your species faces extinction," Chen replied. "There's only winning and dying." Elder Vex-Arian's gaseous form shimmered with distress. "Surely there must be an honorable way to resolve this conflict. Some form of negotiation?" "The Vex-High don't negotiate," Dr. Webb said from where he sat studying biological samples. "I've analyzed the remains of their bioships. They're a hybrid organism that requires constant consumption of organic matter to survive. They literally can't stop hunting." In the corner, Engineer Volkov was working with a group of coalition technicians trying to explain redundant systems. "You build one power core, yes? Very efficient. But what happens when it breaks?" "It doesn't break," replied a crystalline Zephyrian technician. "We build things to last. Our technology hasn't failed in centuries." "Everything breaks eventually," Volkov said, showing them a human toolkit. "Gravity shifts, cosmic radiation, metal fatigue, user error, always have backup plan." "But that's so wasteful," the technician protested. "Why build 2 systems when one perfect system will work?" Volkov gestured toward the window, where the stars shone against black space. "Because space wants to kill you, and perfect systems fail at worst possible moment." Cultural liaison Okafor was having her own challenges. She had tried to organize a recreational activity to help the different species bond, but her suggestion of competitive team sports had caused a near panic among the peaceful coalition members. "You want us to physically compete against each other?" Ambassador Lyra asked, her gills fluttering with anxiety. "It's just basketball," Okafor explained, holding up a round orange ball. "Two teams try to put the ball through the other team's hoop. First team to score more points wins." "What happens to the losing team?" a bird-like aviarian asked nervously. "Nothing. They shake hands with the winners and maybe play again tomorrow." "You fight against your friends for entertainment?" "It's not fighting, it's competing. Humans enjoy testing ourselves against challenges and each other. It makes us stronger." The confusion deepened when Dr. Webb suggested they watch human entertainment to better understand Earth culture. The movie he chose, an action film about soldiers fighting alien invaders, sent half the coalition representatives fleeing from the room within the first 10 minutes. "This is horrible!" General Thanos squawked, covering his eyes as explosions filled the screen. "Why would anyone create such violent imagery for pleasure?" "It's fiction," Webb explained. "Humans use stories to explore dangerous situations safely. We prepare for threats that might never come." "You enjoy imagining death and destruction?" "We enjoy imagining survival against impossible odds," Commander Chen corrected. "Every human child grows up hearing stories about heroes who faced terrible enemies and won through courage and clever thinking." Meanwhile, the real enemy was getting closer. 3 more worlds had fallen while the humans worked with the coalition. The Vex-High bioships had adapted to every new defensive measure, learning from each encounter and becoming stronger. Their latest attack on the Meridian colonies had shown new capabilities, including the ability to corrupt coalition technology and turn it against its creators. "They're not just consuming organic matter anymore," Dr. Webb reported to the command team. "They're integrating quantum technologies into their bioships. They're becoming part machine, part organic, and part energy being." "How is that possible?" Elder Vexarian asked. "Evolution at an accelerated pace," Webb replied. "They don't just eat their prey. They study it, learn from it, and incorporate useful traits into their collective. Every species they've consumed has made them more dangerous." Commander Chen studied the tactical displays showing the Vex-High fleet movements. "They'll be here in 36 hours. Are your people ready?" "I don't think they'll ever be ready for what you're asking," Ambassador Lyra said quietly. "Many of them are still struggling with the concept of acceptable losses." "What do you mean?" "You keep talking about sacrificing some ships to save others or using volunteers for dangerous missions. Our species don't think that way. Every life is precious. We don't leave anyone behind." Chen nodded slowly. "I understand. That's an admirable philosophy. But sometimes, trying to save everyone means losing everyone." She turned to address the full assembly of coalition representatives. "I know human military thinking seems harsh to you. But consider this. The Vex-High have conquered 200 worlds because they understand something your species doesn't. Sometimes survival requires making terrible choices." A Corvan female named Sarah raised her hand. "What kind of choices?" "The choice to retreat when you want to fight. The choice to sacrifice equipment to save lives. The choice to appear weak when you're actually setting a trap." Chen's expression was serious. "The choice to let some die so that others can live." The room fell silent. These concepts went against everything the coalition species believed about cooperation and mutual protection. "There's something else," Dr. Webb said, activating a holographic display. "I've been studying human children's games and comparing them to coalition recreational activities. Human children play war games, competitive sports, and survival simulations. They pretend to hunt, fight, and overcome obstacles." "That sounds terrible," Thanos said. "But look at the results," Webb continued. "Human children learn strategic thinking, risk assessment, and teamwork under pressure. Coalition children learn cooperation, creativity, and peaceful problem-solving. Both are valuable, but only one prepares a species for existential threats. Engineer Volkov stood up from where he'd been working on Coalition ship modifications. "Is finished," he announced. "I install human-style redundancy systems on 12 ships. When primary systems fail, backup systems activate automatically." "But our systems don't fail," a Coalition engineer protested. Volkov grinned, showing his teeth in what the aliens had learned was a human expression of amusement. "We'll see." Commander Chen walked over to the tactical display and pointed to the approaching Vex-High fleet. "In 36 hours, we're going to put everything we've learned to the test. I need you all to remember one thing. We're not trying to defeat the Vex-High in direct combat. We're trying to outthink them." "What's the plan?" Ambassador Lyra asked. "We're going to do something the Vex-High won't expect," Chen replied. "We're going to give them exactly what they want, and when they take it, they're going to discover why humans survived on a death world." Cultural liaison. Okafor stepped forward. "Before we begin, there's one more thing you should understand about human culture. When faced with impossible odds, humans don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our sacrifice means something." "Sacrifice?" Elder Vexarian's form grew pale. "The willingness to give everything for something greater than yourself," Okafor explained. "It's what separates survival from victory." As the Coalition representatives filed out to prepare for the coming battle, many of them wondered what kind of allies they had found. These humans spoke casually of death, planned for failure, and seemed to enjoy conflict. But as the last red dots disappeared from the galaxy map, representing the final fall of the outer colonies, they also wondered if perhaps that was exactly what they needed. The Vex-High were coming, and the galaxy's last hope lay with warriors from a world that had taught them the difference between living and surviving. The Vex-High fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of living metal. Ambassador Lyra watched from the command center as 18 bioships materialized around Sanctuary Station. Each vessel was the size of a small moon, its hull a writhing mass of organic tubes and mechanical systems. They moved with predatory grace, their sensor arrays scanning the Coalition's defenses like hungry eyes. "They're even bigger than the reports suggested," General Thanos whispered, his feathers trembling. Commander Chen stood calmly beside them, studying the display. "Size doesn't matter when you know where to hit them. Dr. Webb, are your packages ready?" "Loaded and waiting," Webb replied from his station. The human biologist had spent the last 30 hours working in the laboratory, creating something he called biological countermeasures. He had refused to explain exactly what that meant, only saying that Earth had taught his species to turn their enemies' strengths against them. "Volkov, how are the ship modifications?" "All Coalition vessels equipped with human redundancy systems," the engineer reported. "Also installed special surprise you requested." "Cultural teams ready?" "Psychological warfare programs loaded into all communication arrays," Okafor confirmed. "The Vex-High won't know what hit them." Elder Vexarian's gaseous form pulsed with nervous energy. "I still don't understand the plan. You're asking us to surrender our ships to the enemy?" "Not surrender," Chen corrected. "Present them as irresistible bait." The lead Vex-High bioship broadcast a message that chilled everyone in the command center. The voice was a harmony of biological sounds and mechanical tones, speaking in perfect Coalition standard language. "Coalition species, resistance is futile. You will be absorbed into our collective. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Surrender now, and your absorption will be swift." "They're using phrases from the species they've consumed," Dr. Webb observed. "See how they mix Zephyrian technical terms with Nereid emotional concepts? They've learned our languages by eating our people." Ambassador Lyra felt sick. "What do we tell them?" "Nothing," Chen said. She activated her communicator. "All ships, begin Phase 1. Make it look convincing. What happened next went against everything the coalition had ever learned about space combat. Instead of forming defensive positions, their ships scattered in apparent panic. Instead of targeting the enemy's weapons, they seemed to fire randomly. Instead of coordinating their efforts, each ship appeared to be fleeing independently. The Vex-High responded exactly as Commander Chen had predicted. The bioships spread out to pursue the fleeing coalition vessels, their hunting instincts overriding their tactical assessment. They had seen this pattern before with every species they had conquered. Bioship 7 is targeting the Meridian refugee transport, reported a coalition officer. Perfect, Chen said coldly. Let them catch it. But there are 300 civilians aboard that ship, Thanios protested. No, there aren't, Chen replied. We evacuated all civilians 18 hours ago. That ship is crewed entirely by volunteers who know exactly what they're doing. On the display, they watched the bioship engulf the transport vessel. Massive organic tubes extended from the Vex-High ship and began dissolving the smaller craft's hull. Within minutes, the entire coalition vessel had been absorbed into the enemy's biomass. Now they're integrating our technology, Elder Vexarian observed in horror. Yes, Chen said with satisfaction. Dr. Webb, how long until your gift reaches their central nervous system? The engineered viruses should start affecting their biomechanical interfaces within the hour, Webb replied, checking his instruments. I designed them specifically to target the hybrid systems the Vex-High use to control their ships. Viruses? Lyra's gills contracted with shock. You infected our own ship. With a virus that only affects Vex-High biotechnology, Webb explained. It's designed to disrupt the neural pathways they use to coordinate between organic and mechanical systems. Think of it as a computer virus that only works on their specific operating system. Another coalition ship was caught and absorbed, then another. Each time, the humans watched with cold satisfaction as their enemies unknowingly consumed their own destruction. Bioship 3 is showing signs of system instability, reported Okafor, monitoring the psychological warfare broadcasts. They're receiving our fear frequency transmissions on all channels. Fear frequency? General Thanos asked. Humans have studied the psychological effects of sound and imagery for centuries, Okafor explained. We've identified specific combinations that trigger panic responses in most organic nervous systems. Even if they don't understand our language, their brains respond to the fear signals. The Vex-High were beginning to realize something was wrong. Their bioships were moving erratically, their perfect coordination breaking down as the engineered viruses spread through their collective nervous systems. The absorbed coalition technology was fighting back from within. Now for Phase 2, Chen announced. Volkov, activate the surprises. The remaining coalition ships suddenly changed tactics. Instead of fleeing, they turned toward the largest bioships and accelerated to ramming speed. But just before impact, they disappeared in brilliant explosions. What was that? Elder Vexarian demanded. Controlled overload of quantum power cores, Volkov said proudly. I remove safety systems and install manual detonation triggers. Very big boom. The explosions weren't just destroying the coalition ships. The quantum energy was interfering with the bioships' ability to maintain their hybrid systems. Several enemy vessels began breaking apart as their organic and mechanical components lost synchronization. You turned our ships into bombs? Ambassador Lyra asked in shock. We turned empty ships into weapons, Chen corrected. Every crew member volunteered and evacuated in escape pods before detonation. 0 casualties on our side. But the ships represented centuries of coalition craftsmanship. Ships can be rebuilt, Chen said simply. Species can't. The largest bioship, apparently the Fleet Command vessel, attempted to retreat as its companions writhed in mechanical agony. But Commander Chen wasn't finished with it. Cultural Liaison Okafor, transmit Package 3 directly to their command ship. Broadcasting now, Okafor confirmed. The transmission wasn't a weapon in any conventional sense. It was pure information warfare. Cultural liaison Okafor had studied the Vex-High communication patterns and identified their collective memory storage systems. She was now flooding those systems with carefully crafted psychological triggers. "What are you sending them?" General Thanos asked. "Fear," Okafor replied. "Specifically, the ancestral fear responses of every species they've absorbed. Predator anxiety from herbivorous species, territorial panic from social species, isolation terror from hive minds, all broadcast simultaneously." The command bioship began thrashing like a wounded animal. Its organic components were receiving conflicting neural signals as centuries of absorbed memories triggered simultaneous fear responses. The mechanical systems couldn't compensate for the biological chaos. "The remaining bioships are retreating," reported a coalition officer. "No," Dr. Webb said, studying his readings. "They're not retreating. They're dying." The human biologist was right. One by one, the Vex-High bioships were succumbing to the viral attack, psychological warfare, and internal system failures. Their perfect adaptation had become their weakness. By absorbing coalition technology and crew members, they had also absorbed human biological warfare. As the last enemy vessel collapsed into dead biomass, the command center fell silent. The impossible had happened. The unstoppable Vex-High fleet had been destroyed. "How?" Ambassador Lyra asked quietly. "Earth taught us something the rest of the galaxy never learned," Commander Chen explained. "To survive on a death world, you can't just be strong. You have to be smart, adaptable, and willing to use your enemy's nature against them." "The Vex-High were perfect hunters," Dr. Webb added. "But they expected their prey to behave like prey. They never encountered a species that hunted back." Engineer Volkov grinned at the wreckage on the display. "Is like old Earth saying, if you want to kill monster, you must think like bigger monster." Cultural liaison. Okafor turned to face the coalition representatives. "This is what humans call asymmetric warfare. Instead of fighting an enemy's strengths, you exploit their weaknesses. The Vex-High's greatest strength was their ability to absorb and adapt. So we made sure that what they absorbed would destroy them from within." The coalition leaders stared at the humans with a mixture of awe and terror. These beings from a death world had just demonstrated a form of warfare that was both brilliant and horrifying. They had asked for salvation, and Earth had sent its apex predators. 6 months after the Vex-High fleet died among the stars, Ambassador Lyra floated in her chamber aboard the newly constructed Unity station. Through her window, she could see something that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. Human children playing with young corvins in the station's artificial gravity garden. The children were laughing as they chased each other through the low-gravity environment, their different biologies making for an interesting game. The human children moved with the dense, purposeful energy their species was known for, while the corvin cubs bounded with their natural agility. Despite their differences, they had found common ground in play. "Strange to think how frightened we were of them at first," General Thanos said, entering the chamber. His feathers had regained their bright colors, and he moved with renewed confidence. "Are you still frightened?" Lyra asked. Thanos considered the question carefully. "Not frightened, respectful." "There's a difference." Elder Vex-Arian materialized beside them, his gaseous form more stable than Lyra had seen in years. "The reconstruction efforts are proceeding ahead of schedule. Human engineering techniques have improved our building efficiency by 300%. And their redundancy systems? Irritating but effective, Vex-Arian admitted. Pavel Volkov was right about systems failing at the worst possible moment. We've had 6 minor equipment failures this month that would have been major disasters under our old designs. They were discussing the cultural integration programs when Commander Chen arrived for the weekly security briefing. The human looked exactly the same as she had 6 months ago, though Lyra had learned that appearances could be deceiving with this species. "Any word from the Outer Rim surveys?" Lyra asked. "We found 3 more Vex-High outposts," Chen reported. "Small ones, probably scout bases. Dr. Webb's biological countermeasures are working perfectly. The remaining Vex-High are avoiding any system with human presence." "And the refugee resettlement?" "Ahead of schedule. The surviving populations from the conquered worlds are adapting well to their new homes. Some are even requesting human advisors for their security planning." Cultural liaison. Okafor joined them, carrying a datapad filled with integration reports. "The most interesting development is in the education sector. Coalition children are asking to learn human games and survival skills. Their parents are mixed in their reactions." "How so?" Elder Vexarian asked. "They want their children to be safe. But they're worried about encouraging aggressive behavior. We're working on programs that teach strategic thinking and risk assessment without promoting violence." Dr. Webb arrived last, as usual, carrying samples and research notes. The human biologist had become fascinated with coalition biology and was working on medical advances that could benefit both human and alien populations. "Any progress on the immunity treatments?" Commander Chen asked. "Remarkable progress," Webb replied enthusiastically. "Coalition species have natural resistances to diseases that affect humans, and humans have resistances that protect against coalition pathogens. We're developing universal vaccines that could prevent biological warfare entirely." "Speaking of biological warfare," Lyra said carefully, "the Coalition Council has been discussing the ethical implications of the methods used against the Vex-High." The humans exchanged glances. This had been an ongoing conversation for months. "I understand the concern," Commander Chen said. "Using engineered viruses as weapons goes against everything Coalition species believe about the sanctity of life." "It does," Lyra agreed. "But it also saved our entire civilization." "The Council has reached a decision," General Thanos announced. "We want to formalize the arrangement between our species." He activated a holographic display showing the proposed treaty terms. "The Terran Compact. Human worlds become full members of the Coalition with all associated rights and privileges. In return, Earth accepts responsibility for defending Coalition space against existential threats." "You want us to become your military," Chen said. "We want you to become our guardians," Elder Vexarian corrected. "Coalition species will continue to handle exploration, research, trade, and diplomatic relations. Human forces will focus on strategic defense and threat assessment." Cultural liaison. Okafor studied the proposal carefully. "What about cultural exchange? My people learn best through interaction and cooperation. The treaty includes extensive exchange programs," Thanos explained. "Coalition youth can learn human survival and strategic thinking. Human youth can learn coalition cooperation and peaceful conflict resolution. Both species benefit," Lyra added. "Humans gain access to advanced technology and scientific knowledge. Coalition species gain protection and strategic capabilities we never developed." Dr. Webb looked up from the medical data he'd been studying. "There's another benefit no one's mentioned. Genetic diversity. Not for interbreeding," he added quickly, seeing their expressions, "but for biological resilience. Human immune systems are adapted to fight diseases from a death world. Coalition immune systems are adapted to their specific environments. Together, we create a much more resistant population base." Engineer Volkov, who had been quietly examining the station's technical specifications, finally spoke up. "Is good plan. Coalition builds beautiful things that work perfectly. Humans build ugly things that work when beautiful things break. Together, we build things that are both beautiful and reliable." Commander Chen stood and looked out at the children playing in the garden. "On Earth, we have a saying, 'It takes a village to raise a child.' I think we're building something bigger than a village here." "What's that?" Ambassador Lyra asked. A family. The treaty signing took place 3 days later in the main assembly hall. Representatives from every surviving coalition species attended, along with the human delegation. The ceremony was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching worlds that were just beginning to rebuild. As Ambassador Lyra signed the document on behalf of the aquatic species, she reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, the coalition had been a peaceful alliance facing extinction. Now they were part of something entirely new, a galactic civilization that combined the best aspects of cooperation and protection. The human children in the crowd were watching the ceremony with quiet attention, while coalition youngsters whispered questions about human customs. In a few years, these children would grow up thinking of interspecies cooperation as normal, natural, and necessary. The Terran Compact is now in effect, Elder Vexarian announced to the assembly. May it bring peace to the galaxy and protection to all who need it. As the celebration began, Commander Chen approached Ambassador Lyra privately. You know this is just the beginning, right? There will be other threats, other enemies we haven't imagined yet. I know, Lyra replied. But now we have something we didn't have before. What's that? Each other. In the months that followed, the partnership deepened. Human strategic academies opened on coalition worlds, teaching practical survival skills alongside traditional academic subjects. Coalition research stations welcomed human scientists, who brought new perspectives on problem-solving and innovation. The first joint exploration missions launched within a year, crewed by mixed-species teams. Coalition members handled first contact protocols and diplomatic relations, while humans managed security and contingency planning. The combination proved remarkably effective. And in the deep space monitoring stations scattered throughout the galaxy, human and coalition observers worked side by side, watching for signs of new threats. They knew that somewhere in the dark between the stars other dangers were waiting. But they also knew they were no longer alone. The galaxy had learned an important lesson from the Vex-High invasion. Peace was precious, but it required protection. Beauty was valuable, but it needed strength to survive. Cooperation was essential, but sometimes cooperation meant accepting help from those who thought differently. The coalition had begged for salvation and received something better. Partners who understood that sometimes, to preserve life, you had to be willing to take it. Earth had sent its Deathworlders, and the galaxy had discovered what it meant to have guardians who would never give up, never surrender, and never stop fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. In the end, it wasn't about humans being better than other species, or stronger, or more advanced. It was about diversity, adaptation, and the recognition that survival required many different kinds of strength. The galaxy was safer now, not because humans were perfect protectors, but because they understood what the peaceful species had never needed to learn, that the universe was not always kind, and those who would preserve kindness must be prepared to face its absence.